operations, like how developers work, and he thought we needed an issue tracker. So then I got sucked into this massively crappy political which issue tracker are we going to be using project that I hated and that got everybody to hate me. So I try to avoid the term for the most part just because of how vague it is, but that's really what this talk is about, is how we bring different teams together to create an operational reality that wasn't possible before. So I am also going to let Jeremy plug the group that we're a part of. You cool with that?
Yeah. Sure. Get to the microphone and everything.
Yeah.
So we do have a local Dallas DevOps user group. It's called Dallas DevOps Live.
Is this working?
Oh, yeah. Dallas DevOps Live, if you are interested in it. We actually had Chef come the other day and speak about audit compliance. We've had Puppet. We've had people come and talk about DevOps. Flew a guy in a couple of weeks ago at a big kickoff thing. Had about 60 or 70 people there. It's on meetup.com. It's called Dallas or DevOps Live or Dallas DevOps Live. If you have any questions, Jeremy Hillen on Twitter or Gmail, and let me know.
Is it two places? Either at CA Technologies, which is over. Is that right?
No, not anymore.
Not anymore.
So it's at Heartland. Heartland Payment Systems, which is in Frisco, Plano, 121 in the Tollway. The second Thursday of every month. The last Wednesday of every month, it's in Addison at Improving. They're one of our sponsors for the location.
Yes. So I've been to a few of them. I plan on going to a lot more of them. Jeremy's great, and it's a good community of people who really get and want to know more about stuff like this. So before we get started on the presentation, how many of you consider yourself developers? Okay, half the room. QA? Yeah. Then security? Really? Seriously? What's your name? Mike? Okay, where are you security at? Okay, I'm gonna pick on Mike the whole time. Yeah, it's gonna be good. I was running through this internally, and I had the security guy with me. I was like, I need to find the security person. It's good. This is gonna be good for you, and the other people who raised their hand. Yes, indeed. And then operations. Yeah, in the corner. All right. And then management. Yeah, management. All right. Okay, so we've got about half developers. That's kind of what half to 2/3 developers is what I expected. I come from a development background, so hopefully that fits. But really the thesis of this conversation is bringing all the groups together. Security development, QA, and operations. So the talk is called Infrastructure as Code. I am Michael Hedgepeth, and I'm a software architect at NCR. Lots of things go to Nathan Harvey and the Chef people. I liberally stole sections of this from his slide presentation. So he gives a very similar talk, and I will credit him for that. He allowed me to use some of his presentation materials. And then hedge-shops.com is where I blog, and that's my Twitter handle. So if you want to reach out, I would be happy to talk to you after this or on the interwebs. So a little bit about my story before we get into the meat of the presentation. I went to a local college and thought it was a good idea to get a management information systems degree. Because at the time I thought computer science might be too hard. And toward, I guess, I might age myself here, so sorry if I'm gonna do that, but around 1999, I was a sophomore, and everybody was going to be rich with development, and it was gonna be awesome. The job market was rocking, and it was rolling. And then in 2000, everybody's gonna get a job, but maybe it wasn't going to be quite as good as what we all thought it was gonna be. And in 2001, everybody was going to go flip burgers at McDonald's because there were no jobs. And so as I saw the dot-com bust, I realized that I wasn't just going to be given anything, and that I was woefully unprepared to enter the software industry, which is what I wanted to do. And so I started reading a lot. And one of the books I started reading was Martin Fowler's Refactoring book, which is this classic book on good engineering. And that kind of created a web for me into Agile, into test-driven development, into good engineering practices, which gave me a good foundation for, and a good vision for what I wanted to have happen in my career. So the very first part of my career kind of came to that second step there, which was, let's figure that out. Test-driven development at the time had a lot of theory behind it, and there were stories that people did this thing, but how do you actually do it? I walked through how to do it and delivered a couple of successful projects with test-driven development as its basis. Found out how to bring an Agile team together. Mike Cohn's book on Agile was really helpful for me with that. And I feel created the basis of what I'm about in my career, and that was good. And my business saw that and labeled me the automated testing person. So not that there's anything wrong with that. Shout out to the QA here. So what they put me on next was a project to code a platform for automated testing of our platform or our flagship POS software, which was created in 1993. So I built that using test-driven development in C#, an application that today runs over 10,000 different test cases using virtualization architecture, and the test cases are basically a recorded playback test case and testing metrics in the point of sale and stuff like that. And that was really cool. I consider it a successful QA project. We couldn't use a lot of external tools because of the challenges related to having a software that was built in 1993, number one, and then also having really distributed software. So it's really important in a restaurant, which is the industry I'm in, it's in a restaurant to be able to order something on the drive-through window and have somebody receive payment on the other window. So you have a lot of different nodes and a lot of interactions going on, a lot of virtualization. And at the time, this was 6 or 7 years ago, we didn't really feel like we had the tooling or the budget for the tooling to be able to deliver it. So we wrote it, we delivered it, it was awesome, right? And so I figured out the basis of Agile, test-driven development, good design, that was awesome. Experienced how to expand that into the testing space, understood a little bit more about where QA are coming from, what their challenges are, and I got sent to an internal conference to talk about it. So we had our user conference, which is a yearly conference where all big customers, that some of whom you know and love, were at the conference, and I had the topic, quality initiatives within our software base. So I showed up with an awesome slide deck of all the metrics and the cool stuff that we had done, and our customers at the time sat down with me and basically derailed my presentation very quickly because they were upset that, number one, they weren't receiving software any quicker than they had before, and number two, they experienced defects that were they still experienced defects that prevented them from being able to install and restore without a lot of pain and a lot of testing on their part. And this is after 4 or 5 years of me making that my number one priority, my number one job. So that sucked. I really didn't enjoy that moment, but I decided that I would dig into it a little more. And what I realized is that the POS had become immune to business logic quality. In other words, it didn't really have any problem with you ring up something and the order says $5.53. The taxes were all good because we tested all that, right? And so problems that we had 5 years before, possibly with pieces of the check or whatever, they were not, they weren't there anymore. But what the people had instead was configuration issues. So it doesn't work for me, or I can't get it installed. And so I realized that there is a third leg of a stool in an agile transformation that is operations. And so I'm going to put operations and security under an umbrella. It's basically anything that you need to operationalize this thing. So the first leg of the stool is definitely what we talk about a lot. Most of the room's developers, how are we going to be agile? What's the size of our backlog? All this stuff. And it's great. Can we do test-driven development? How valuable it is? All that stuff. That's great. The second leg of the stool is how are we going to approach quality with QA? And that is, how are we going to do automated testing, acceptance level testing? What role does manual testing have in that? How are we going to make sure that we're ready to ship this thing? And the third leg of the stool is how are we going to actually make this run? And so my thesis today is that if we ignore the third leg of the stool, we do so at our own peril, and we will only be as agile as the slowest leg of that stool. And so if we focus all of our energy on development, all of our energy on QA, then we will not be any faster, because when you get to security, they'll say, that's really great that you did that really quickly, but it's not secure. Or when the operations people show up, they say, I don't even know how to run this thing, and I can't do that regularly because it's always failing for me. So my post-agile challenge is that agile does make us faster. It's awesome. I love agile. I love all of the stuff that has to do with it. It doesn't get too religious. And the business demand is bigger than it ever has been before. So my manager today imagines things that my manager today did not imagine 5 years ago. And it's only getting bigger. We want a global presence in the cloud and this and that and the other thing. And I, as a development team, our development teams are saying they can deliver that, but operations and security have traditionally been left out of that discussion, and that leads them to not much changing. It seems to change from a development perspective, but when it comes to how quickly are our customers receiving this thing, not much different than it used to be. And so we're going to do a little bit of an object lesson here. I need 3 volunteers. 3 volunteers? Anyone? A room of IT workers needs to raise their hand. No one wants to. Yes, you, and one more, you? Okay. Okay, so this, y'all need to come up here for this, sorry. Thank you very much. All right, so this object lesson involves a rope. There are rules to this game. In order to not make things too awkward, number one, you cannot touch each other, because that's awkward. And, okay. And number two, like, this isn't like tug of war and watch the other person trip time, you know, so that's awkward, right? So this is going to be an awkward-free object lesson, but we're going to grab a rope. There you go. And you can get the middle, just like right here. And then you can come over here to the other part. And got this from our garage, so it's a little long. All right, smells like gasoline. It smells like gasoline? All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to walk this way. All right, just go. Okay, that was pretty good. That was pretty good. All right, now, what's your name?
Brandon.
Brandon, and you are Mary, and you are Robbie. Okay, Brandon is the only member of his team. And he stayed up last night until 3 in the morning because there was an outage. And he's tired, and he doesn't want to go very fast. But Mary, you're good, right? You got a great team. You went agile, right? And then Robbie, he's good too, okay? Now, the other rule, Robbie, is you cannot go past Brandon over there, right? Because that's very good. So, Brandon, you're going to go slow. You guys just keep going where you're going, all right? Now, don't get a tug of war and let them fall down things, okay? All right, go, go, go. All right, so what happens? How fast are we going?
That's like minutes.
We're going as fast as he's going. Are we going as fast as he's going? No. Yes, theory of constraints. Very good. So this thing is called drum buffer rope. Can anyone guess who the drum is? It's kind of a weird theory. He's the drum. Okay, so let's just say we're in a manufacturing plant, right? So this guy might be Brandon. Yes, I'm not good with names. Brandon might be the painting machine, right? Robbie might be sourcing, and Mary might be packaging, right? So the painting machine is where all the units kind of get stuck, right? And so in the theory of constraints, in drum buffer rope, then you focus all of your energy on the constraining factor, the slowest component. Because the slowest component is the component that is literally choosing what speed you are going whenever you're delivering, right? So thank you all very much. Y'all give them a round of applause. So my thesis here today is that if we do development and we get on board and do the TDD stuff and do the, whatever it is, that's great. If QA starts automating, that's great. Awesome. Let's do it. But then if security and operations aren't involved, that's the slowest component, and you are going to go only as fast as they can go. All right, so I'm going to use a little bit of an economic metaphor to illustrate this a little bit. Hope you guys enjoy it. But this is basically the evolution of commerce. And so when I think of teams, I think of them as falling along the lines of one of these phases. And so I'm going to ask you which phase you are in after this. So be thinking about that. So the first phase is the hunting phase, right? You think about thousands of years ago, what were people doing? They were trying to go kill something and eat it almost immediately. They barely or didn't have fire. They were gathering berries, right? And in the IT space, the hunting thing is that team which only survives on basically the fire and putting it out. So they're totally reactive. The main goal is survival. The resources are scarce, but the biggest problem is burnout. So back in the hunting days, life expectancy was probably around my age. And if you see, this happens a lot of times in operations, not enough staff, people staying up till 3 in the morning, you got a lot of burned out people there. So that's the hunting phase, and then people are like, well, maybe we don't have to go focus just on killing animals, and maybe we can grow some stuff, and if we start in the spring, we'll have a festival just so everybody doesn't forget, and we grow stuff and harvest, and in the fall we'll have another festival, just in case, just so nobody forgets. Stuff will grow, and we don't have to kill as much stuff, and we'll have a better existence as long as the neighboring city doesn't come and kill us, right? So the key element of agriculture phase is you got to follow a process, right? If they don't follow a process, they're dead. And so this type of team wants you to fill out a form, and they have a policy that it is your lead time for this thing is 45 days, or and the problem with that works really well, but the problem with that is anytime you want to change something, it doesn't really fit. So if like a flood comes and you're farming, you're kind of screwed, right? So you got to migrate or something. You're probably, for a very good chance you're going to die. You might even revert back to the hunting phase, where it's like, okay, a flood came, and I think we need to go back to killing animals now, right? All the time. So people say, okay, well, what if we specialized instead? So we get somebody focused on somebody being the cloud person, somebody being the security person, but there's only one of them. And instead of having just kind of a form to fill out, the cloud person can kind of help you get into the cloud. The security person can help you be secure. And so they can be more flexible. They can address the problems that you get from the agriculture phase, right? But the problem is those resources are expensive and they're constrained, right? If you have one security person at scale, that person is always in audits and they're never available, right? So you cannot scale with that. So people say, what if we got these people and what if they created policies and we just try to create a lot of, maybe we do an outsourcing thing. We just create a lot of people to cover what they were doing, and we'll have these subject matter experts write it all down. This is kind of another phase of the agriculture, but at another scale. But again, you get back to the problem of complexity. You can't really you can't get anything interesting done when everybody's just following the manual. And so we get to automation, where the main goal is complex scale. And we all in this room get to experience the benefits of complex scale. We can write software that creates commerce for people we don't even know in situations we haven't even imagined. And that's why it's so awesome. That's technology, right? Regardless of if you're a developer or in security or operations, you get to be a part of this wonderful reality of creating complex scale for people, right? Resources are very cheap. I know that you probably don't think that you're very cheap, but in terms of what you're able to accomplish for the economy, you are relatively inexpensive, especially from a plant worker when you're comparing automation to not automation. But the biggest problem is getting everybody together to realize realize what the problem actually is and create a solution for it. The biggest problem, I think, is delivery within complexity. So we all think we're this group because we're in technology, right? So who in their team believes they're in the automation group? Got a couple of hands? 3? Yeah. I think I'm in the automation group. Who thinks they're in the hunting group? Yes? A couple of people? Burnout? Who's in the agriculture policy group? Nobody? Yeah, the security guy. Yes. I thought you were going to be the specialist. No, not yet. Who's in the specialist group? You just go to that one person who knows one person. Yeah, and then the industrialization group. Yeah, a few more hands. So what this is trying to illustrate is even if certain sections of your business, I mean, if you're in this room, some section of your business is automated because you're in technology, right? So even though there are certain sections of your business that are automated, other sections are not automated. And those sections that aren't automated, just like the drum buffer rope that we saw earlier, those sections that aren't automated are going to hold you back and going to limit your effectiveness velocity. And as your competitors figure this out and solve these problems, they are going to kill you. So you need to figure these problems out for yourself and be a good competing member of the global economy, right? So what these non-automated states within teams in our organization creates is this quality rate of innovation trade-off. So depending on your role, you've probably been on one side of one side of this or the other in terms of an argument on when to release. So if you're on the development side, you're oh, laser. Yeah. You're over, oh, that doesn't even work on the movie screen. You're over here, right? You want to ship the thing because this is going to be awesome. And then you're in the room and you're saying, have you ever heard of disruptive innovation? Who ever thought of Uber 5 years ago, right? And you're having the conversation there. If you're in the QA operations security roles, you're on the other side. You're going to say, like maybe if you're the security person, you're going to say, well, that's great that you're going to disruptively innovate everything, but do you want to get owned by the hackers in Russia? Maybe not, right? Or the quality person says, yeah, but this is buggy and it's going to ruin our reputation of quality and our customers will be mad at us. So ultimately, the smarter managers decide, right? And they say, well, the dot shall be right there, right? And everybody just sort of treats that as business as usual. We're always going to have that trade-off. And I'm not going to argue against that. We always do have that trade-off. However, I'm going to argue that you can expand that line out. So the problem with business as usual is we have unlimited possibilities with development, more than ever before. We have quick development, more than ever before. It's way quicker than it was 10 years ago for me. And it's delayed by days or weeks to set up infrastructure. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of a poll here. You need a new machine. Is it there in one day? Where are my cloud people? One day? You need a new machine. Can you get it there in one day for your production infrastructure? Raise your hand. Nobody? Yes? Yeah. All right. You need a new machine. Can you get it there in a week? Raise your hand. Oh, a week. Okay. Can you get it in a month? Yes? Do you not know when you're going to get it? Okay. So this is actually one of the reasons. The conference reason was one of the reasons I got into this. But another reason is they called me into this room one day in mid 2014, and they said, "Michael, we want a project." I said, "Great. I'm in the business of delivering awesome stuff for this company, and room of vice presidents. So all right, I can. This is going to be easy." And they tell me the business problem. The business problem was basically to improve the information that our branch offices were getting about how to set up certain things and what versions of software were on different stores. So just give them information that we already have in our infrastructure. Great. How long do you think you can develop it? In my mind, I thought 2 weeks, but I said 6 weeks. And they're like, great. And so I delivered the code in 4 weeks. And I said, but I don't know if we can get the machines for this, because I know how we kind of are sometimes about that. And so the sponsoring project member said, I'll get you those machines, Hedgepath, with this awesome I can do it VP voice, right? And so I still haven't gotten the machines. Like 2 years later. And that made me think, okay, there's a problem here, and I can either complain about it or I can do something about it. And I'm still working within our organization to do something about that problem. I can't admit that it's all the way fixed. But yeah, sometimes the answer is never. And my biggest frustration is those people aren't going to know that I didn't get machines. They don't even know that I delivered it early. They just know I asked for a problem, HedgeFest said yes to it, and it didn't get delivered. And that sucks. It sucks for me, and so I'm trying to change that. If you find a problem that sucks, sometimes you go after it. And then security by documents. I am dealing with this right now where in order to get PCI compliance, I have had to create a 50-page Word document and do every Visio document imaginable in order to comply with stuff. But then the problem there is I'm just writing a document. How do you know I'm going to follow what I just wrote? How do you know anybody else is going to read this? I can barely read it, right? So creating security through documents, just kind of slows everything down. And you get this kind of situation. You get build and test, that's automated. Everybody thinks we're an agile shop, right? But then configuring the thing, securing it, and deploying it are run in various different ways. The configuration person stayed up till 3 in the morning. There's only one of her, and she's burned out, right? And then the security person, he is a specialist, and he's in the middle of a bunch of compliance audits. And the deployment person, she's also the configuration person. And she, as we said before, she's totally burned out, right? So that is painfully slow. This is painfully, not painfully, joyfully fast. Let's fix that. And we fix that through automating all the things. So this is about bringing all these groups together and make them automators, or help them become automators in order to create a better possibility. So yes, you still are going to have a trade-off between quality compliance and rate of innovation, but if you automate, you push that out, and what is possible becomes more acceptable to everybody. And your competitors, because they weren't at this TechFest talk, are still back on the gray line. And they suck, and you're awesome, and you make more money, right? So how do we get there? Fortunately, we have a good, I don't know, what are we going to say, 40, 50-year history of developers automating things, right? So let's just copy the developers. So when we're doing infrastructure as code, we're going to do what the developers do. We're going to store our stuff in source control, in a Git repository. Everything, like a security policy, is going to be in a Git repository. We're going to automatically build and test those things. So the security policy is going to be run on something every time any change is going to happen through a continuous integration thing like TeamCity or Jenkins. And it's going to flag when something doesn't fit. We're going to combine those things all into one policy that will be applied to a node of our infrastructure, preferably in a cloud. So the infrastructure as code piece is a part of a broader strategy and what I like to think of as a 3-part strategy. I hope nobody's busy with my Prezi presentation. This is Prezi, P-R-E-Z-I, and it's like totally awesome. So hopefully it's entertaining and not crazy. But 3 things we need to do to make this happen. Create a dynamic infrastructure. Do infrastructure as code, and that's when I'm going to get into the chef part, tell you, okay, so if you're a security person, this is what a security code looks like. And then culture change, which I think is the biggest part. It's very easy to think all we need to do is implement this tool and everything will be better, and it doesn't work that way, right? So those 3 things will lead to a new business as usual. Anybody have any questions? It's a good stopping point. No? Yes? All right, great. So dynamic infrastructure. So if I go back to my situation, we have an unfortunate reality where if you want new infrastructure, sometimes Dell literally gets a call. And the new host is literally ordered, and they have a lead time, and you have to literally rack the host, and then you bring it up in a virtual environment, and then you can have your new machine. And so if you're going to do automation, you might get somewhere by doing automation. You can solve some other problems. But honestly, without some sort of cloud strategy, you're not going to be anywhere. So that can either be safely go to the cloud with automation, or invest in dynamic expansion. So in other words, Dell does not need to receive a call when people get the need to have more infrastructure. You need to be ahead of your infrastructure. So then that top one, safely go to the cloud with automation. On the surface, it seems really attractive to go buy an AWS image or node and spin it up and then like do your UI thingies to it and configure it and make it run, and that's awesome, right? And you kind of did avoid a few problems there. You avoided calling Dell, which is always a wonderful thing. No, yeah, actually, I had a horrible experience with Dell last year. So I was going to say not that I hate Dell, but I'm starting to hate Dell because they're very like low cost-ish these days, and so they don't really care about as much customer service.
EMC is expensive, buddy.
Yeah. What is it?
EMC is expensive.
Yeah.
When you go buy a whole company like that.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, I don't like their direction. But anyway, it's kind of easy to think, okay, we're solving all of our problems by going to the cloud. That's awesome. And it is cool, except for a few things. Number one, you are on the internet, all of your infrastructure. And that's, if you don't have an automated way of making sure that's okay, that's a huge vulnerability that you're creating for yourself. So if you're trusting, Operations Johnny to go point and click on the right things, then Operations Johnny might make a few mistakes, right? And Operations Johnny might bring your whole business down. And that might not be a good thing. Don't be like Operations Johnny, right? So automation is essential when you're talking about cloud strategy, and that's what we're talking about here. Or do a cloud strategy with dynamic infrastructure. That works too. But my point is, it has to be powered by an automated setup and provisioning of environments. You have to automate the configuration of your nodes in order to make them consistent, in order to fully take advantage of the scale that you need from your business, for your business. Okay, so the code part. You can't have an infrastructure as code talk without looking at some code, so that's what we're going to do. My tool of choice is Chef. I like Chef because they're really good partners with me and my business in creating these realities. But to be honest with you, the tool isn't the center part of what we're talking about here. There are a lot of tools that will do this for you. The reason I use Chef is because they are a good partner with me on the cultural side of things. And they have pretty cool tools as well, but the cultural side is way important. But you can't really get there without an understanding of the code side. So we're going to go through these 4 groups: development, operations, security, and testing. What does it look like whenever you implement infrastructure as code in these 4 groups? Okay, development team, they want to set up an application on a machine. So here you got an IIS app application, and you declare all of the things that people would normally click on in the IIS management console, right? So a few interesting things about this to give you a little Chef lesson, but also it's a public lesson in any configuration management tool lesson, which is you notice that there's not really a script there. And the reason why is because we want to assert the reality of the system all the time, not just whenever you make a change or at the beginning. So if you have a deployment script, you might think, gosh, Michael, I already do this through PowerShell. And that's cool. Awesome, you've gotten it automated. But when you do it through PowerShell, you only do it once when you're setting up the machine. And then Operations Johnny comes along and he clicks on something else and makes it inconsistent, makes it different, possibly makes it non-compliant with your PCI, possibly makes it vulnerable to attacks. And you didn't know that because you have your PowerShell script. So the cool thing about this is you can run this every 10 minutes if you want to. You can run it nightly. You can run it during your maintenance windows. And it forces the machine to maintain the policy that you dictated for the for your environment. This is really, really important when you're talking about security. Security. Yes. Thanks for coming. So the main thing here is that if I can tell an assessor or an auditor, look, these are my policies and I run them every 10 minutes or every night or whatever during my maintenance windows, then your controls for maintaining a compliant environment are very simple. It's not, well, we have a change advisory board that votes, and the person who is going to make the change comes before the board and says, I will make this change. And we trust that person to make that exact change, and that exact change only, and never make mistakes. And that passes an audit, but I think this is going to blow the audit out of the water in a good way, because you're asserting a reality that you run over and over. The negative side of this is sometimes it's easier to write a PowerShell script. Okay, so anybody in Peter's presentation before? Raise your hand. Yeah. Things he's doing at 6.5 are awesome. Is Peter in the room? No. Oh man, it's good. I did his. Yeah. Now that I know he wasn't going to come to mind. So Peter was using Octopus Deploy. Octopus Deploy is based on NuGet packages and PowerShell scripts. And his solution to this was run all the deploys every time you do anything, right? Which is cool, but I would argue it's not quite as cool as this, because this asserts a reality and tells you about this thing called configuration drift, which is when Operations Johnny comes in and does something crazy. And the deployment kind of assumes that you have a predefined state, and you kind of have to trust that a successful deployment means you end with that state. You're not really asserting anything in that situation. So that is the basis of configuration management tools for anybody who didn't know. And you get to assert this IIS app is there, and the very first time it runs on a clean machine, it does a test fix algorithm. So the test says, hey, it's not there, let's fix it. Let's put it there and put it with all those things. And it will even check, are they enabled protocols HTTP? I know everything else is there, but is that thing there? No, let's fix it. And so you get a consistent environment that you can scale. The other thing they may need to do is ensure that their application files are up to date. And is there anybody in the Alamo Draft House in the house? This is an object that's I see some. You guys can have some water. I don't think it's hard. I might drink one of your waters. So here you have, let's get a file from somewhere, right? Let's unzip it. But before we unzip it, shout out to the security people. Let's check their SHA 256 against that file to make sure that that file is the exact same one as the one that was built in my continuous integration system. So make sure that nobody put a similarly named file in my drop location. And so we have better security, and application team gets their upgrades. That's really awesome, but that's not where it ends. You go to operations. What kinds of things do they want? They want to manage configuration. So they want to have some control. Actually, this is a development and operations partnership. So sometimes operations may want to control the database connection string. Sometimes development may want to control a debug flag that they put in for certain logging in the application. This is actually, in my experience, the most common configuration management challenge that people face is what to do with the config files. And so here we've got a web config that is templated. So I have a basic kind of, looks almost like an ASP document where you have your web config, but it has little plugins for where the variables go. And then here in the code, you can just say, my database connection string is this, and it will insert that database connection string in there and put your file out there. So now all the teams are no longer saying, here's a change request, please go change site debug to on in production Tuesday night at 3:30 in the morning. They're doing the changes through here, right? They're declaring them. The other thing that the operations team might want to do is use operation tools for themselves. So they want everything to be like this in the in in their web, all the web servers need to have these tools on them. They can have control over that. So security, what do they want? They want to know that nodes are compliant with security policies. So maybe they want Windows Firewall. I had to look this up. I didn't know that MPS-SBC, I guess that's security by obfuscation a little bit. That's Windows Firewall apparently. They want to be able to know and tell their auditor and tell their conscience when they're going to sleep at night that Windows Firewall is always on, right? And so they can write their portion of this, check it in, and it's a part of the policy of all the nodes in the network. And going back to that test fix thing, they know that if somebody goes and changes it, let's say you have it running every 15 minutes, any change that our good friend Operations Johnny might make will only last 15 minutes. And you can't say that about any other non-automated thing. You can't even say that about a PowerShell script, right? Unless you're running some PowerShell script every 15 minutes, and that might be a little bit crazy. They also want to audit nodes for compliance. And this, I know I got all tool agnostic on you earlier, but this is kind of a cool feature of Chef. I'm not sure if it's in the other tools. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong just by raising your hand. But Chef has a thing called audit mode. They recently acquired a VolcanoSec company, which they are going to become a vulnerability scanning vendor within PCI. They're not there yet, but that's where they're headed. And they have this type of thing here where you can say, I need to ensure that SSH should equal to, I think this is probably a little bit old because from what I'm told, this isn't even good anymore. But you can write a test. And this test is different than the other thing that we were showing you earlier. When I was showing you earlier the IIS app where you had a test fix, there is no fix here, right? So a security person can say, these are the policies that must be there in the infrastructure. And it's just a test. And it runs at the end of every Chef run. So it could potentially run every 15 minutes if that's what you want to do. And it does nothing to the system. It's just a reporting mechanism. But the cool thing about it is, in old school security, you're going to probably have some vulnerability scanning. But in this new school security, the vulnerability scanning happens earlier in the cycle. So you're in a QA node, and you're telling your dev team basically as a security person, you're not running with the right SSH. So I don't want that to be a surprise for you whenever you try to promote this to production. So why don't you fix it right now? And we'll all be happy. And by the way, here's my code that will fix that for you. So you get an auditing functionality there. And finally, you have testing. They want to ensure quality. So here's a test that you can run as a part of Chef that says, I want to make sure that my policy ran on a virtual node as part of our build. And this is kind of, I keep going back to this. This is sort of an elephant in the room when you really think about how we've been doing business for the last however many years you've been in the industry. As a QA person, you say, all right, I see these new features. I'm going to do a regression on the system. Great. I have all of my test cases. I've planned it out. I am ensuring quality. But you don't test the security and you don't test operations until you already deployed, and you test it by making sure the website's still up or whatever it is you're going to do. And that's crazy. You're not testing a huge portion of what it means to deliver quality to your customers. If all you're testing is software features. And so whenever you approach testing, start, if you're in a QA role or if you have a friend who is, start making them think about, if we created an environment in QA that had to have the security standards that we have in production and had to have the operational reality that we have in production, then wouldn't things be of higher quality? Oh yeah, you're talking a lot. Thank you so much. And then what do we normally say to people? Or what's the QA going to say? Well, it's too hard to do that. There's no way we can make it. We don't have enough hardware maybe, or nobody knows how to set up those machines. Well, that's what automation is about. This is what this is about. So you can say, well, actually, there's a, this is 2016, and there are ways to make this happen. This would make everything easier. So this is one example of this, but I would say from the QA perspective, moving the reality of operations to the left into your QA environment is key to delivering quality. So all this comes together. Now, this is something I think on security people. Hopefully, I've thrown out a few things that let you know that I know a couple of things about security, but one of the things the security person was scared of is that the developers would change their security policy, right? Because they don't want that. They want to have full control. So that's totally how it goes within any configuration management, including Chef. So what happens is the security person has their own repository, their own Git repository. And in Chef, it's called a cookbook. And they have a recipe that's like, all my web servers shall look like this. Or even, all of my servers shall look like this, right? And the development has their own cookbook, the operations has their own cookbook, and it's in different Git repositories. And using access control for your Git stuff, you can say, developers shall not make changes to the security cookbook, except for this one that I trust because I don't really want to cook this stuff, right? So that is really what's happening. You're bringing it all together into a policy. And this in Chef is called a policy file. And it's basically a declaration of how it all comes together. In old school Chef, you would sort of not have any good change management where you could throw one of these cookbooks up and change your whole environment. That's no good when you're talking about trying to create repeatability and security in your organization. So in my organization, we use the policy files instead, which says, here's my team's web server policy. And we're going to grab the cookbooks that we're using for IIS from the Chef supermarket, and we're going to run security's recipe first, because they're awesome. And we're going to run the operations web server recipe second, and then we're going to run my product stuff last. So it all comes together, and literally in Chef, it just creates a list of those things called resources that it needs to run, and it just goes for each one of them and does a test fix for all of them, and that's how it works. So this way, you create a delivery pipeline, okay? You do source control. You can even do code review with your infrastructure. So we're going to change the firewall. Can I get a code review for that? And you're kind of using, if you're a security person, you're using the same types of explanations that you use for a software development lifecycle. I wouldn't call it that because separation of roles gets kind of crazy with that. You call it a configuration management lifecycle. Just a little hint there for those of you doing a PCI compliance audit. But you do code review, you keep it in Git, everybody gets their own repository. Then you move it to a build test. We have our builds running in TeamCity. You can do Jenkins, and then in Chef, and actually if you're not using Chef even, you can run this test kitchen thing. This is a shout out for my QA friends. Test kitchen brings up a node, runs Chef against it. It will even run some post acceptance tests, like are my services running, etc. And you hook that in with your build so that you're testing your infrastructure anytime you're delivering, but right before you go into QA. So you know that you can deploy before you even get anything into QA. No more surprises. It's a part of your automation. Then you go to QA, it percolates, but we're going to use the same typical promotion environment that you already have. We're just going to reuse it for our operations. Whereas before, you had only development going through here, and then when you get to production, all this other stuff happens. We don't really know what it is. And so you're doing that earlier, and you're running everything through the same pipeline. So this shouldn't be a lot of work. Everybody in a development group has a QA environment, I hope. If you don't, forget everything I've said, and just create a QA environment. That's a good first step, right? Then you might stage it in a user acceptance testing environment. That's awesome. And then, another shout out to my security friends, approval is still there. So this was kind of a thing that my security friends were scared of at first. They were like, DevOps? We're not going to do DevOps. We got to have controls in place. And I say, yes, we have to have controls in place. You're right. So we're not talking about, sue the developer pushing the button of something she just built and all of a sudden all of her nodes get into production. That would be insane. You have to have some approval. If you have an organization of any size, you gotta have approval and accountability, or else things get crazy really quick. And so for us, we have a change advisory board, and they meet on Wednesdays from 9 to 10 and talk about all the changes. And we're still going to do that with Chef, right? We still do that with Chef. Here's the conversation that happens in a change advisory board when you're not using automation. It goes something like this. I'm going to do this change. This change is going to be a change to update the firewall on the web servers. And then everyone, this is the subtle reality here, everyone acts like that is the literal change that's going to happen. Okay, yeah. And so they're evaluating the risk based on the change that they were told was going to happen. But unfortunately, what if the person makes a mistake? What if there's all this risk involved with that? And so you do, if you're smart in the change advisory board, you are weighing risk, but it's kind of theater a little bit because the person wants to make the change. You're not going to say no to that. You're just going to try to help them understand something they didn't think about. And they're doing something for the first time, which we pretty much would say is insane if you were a developer. But okay, we're going to make this change. With the Chef thing, we're going to say, or we say, here's the Chef change we made in QA. It was made on this date. It was made in staging UAT in this state, and we're going to promote it to production. I mean, what are you going to say about that? No. The change has already happened 2 times, and 3 times if you count the test kitchen thing I was just telling you. So yes, you do have approval, but the approval gets a lot less accurate, a lot more realistic whenever you introduce automation into the picture. So any questions on the code section of it? So a use case maybe I didn't cover that you were thinking about? No? All right, I'm going to have some water in it. All right. So when I started this, after I didn't get my machines, actually the timeline of that is I didn't get my machines in May, June, and I went to the conference early July. So it's like this confluence of events that opened my eyes to the whole thing. So I thought, man, this is going to be awesome. If we create this automation, we bring everybody together, this is going to fundamentally transform our business. And it's going to make us a lot of money. It's going to be fun to work on. I've always really liked the QA operations space. I'm beginning to like the security space as well. But let's bring it all together and let's fix all these problems that are plaguing us. And I was the true believer marching into the organization with my awesome stuff that I was getting ready to unleash on them. And it was going to be awesome. And then I was surprised to realize that there were a few people who were really excited. There were people who were really pissed off, and there were people who were passively aggressively against what I was trying to do. And in any big organization, that's really the reality of what you're going to come across. You're going to come across people who are overtly against you, people who are passive aggressive with you, and some of the people whose problems that I thought this would address the most were the most aggressively against them. Like, for example, security. So a security person, we're just going to go to that first one, alignment. The security person that is my main partner and friend now, immediately saw Chef as a threat to our very existence. Because here is one place through which we can gain administrative access to the entire network. And that's kind of scary. So one of the first steps I had to do is policy files. So do some change management controls. You can't just upload something and all of a sudden everybody gets it. You have to put people through a process. That's cool. But that wasn't nearly enough. I had to realize that I had to align myself with him in order for him to see the benefit of it. So the vulnerability scanning is a part of it, but even speaking the same language as him is another part of it. So alignment is key whenever you're doing something like this. Empathy is also key. So I had to see things from his perspective. And so what I ended up doing was I ended up reading a 400-page book on PCI compliance. Anybody want to do that? It wasn't that fun. It was kind of interesting though, because I realized this was the only way that I was going to be able to think empathetically and work with him as a partner. And I realized in PCI compliance, there's a lot of crap in there that he has to do. Like wrote stuff over and over and over again. Like anytime somebody gets fired, he has to deactivate their account. Anytime he needs to do a vulnerability scan once a week, he needs to make sure his firewalls have change management on them. And that's just three of probably a list of 100 things. So he's got a lot on his plate. And so as I began talking to him, I started throwing out things like, yeah, vulnerability scanning sounds crazy. What if we did this? Or, yeah, I think keeping a catalog of all your machines and having to do change management over that catalog is probably the reason you're not going to the cloud, because people are going to create and destroy machines all the time. Yeah, that's right, Michael, that is the reason. And so empathy, yes, 5 minutes. Empathy was a key component to getting things done with them. The other thing that I've run against is kind of this courage to change thing. So people get afraid whenever you talk about automation. That's just, so especially maybe an operations person who's built their whole career on being that savior is going to be nervous, but their value is going to go way up once they get into this space. And so I look at it as a good thing, not a bad thing. And working in small batches, not saying we are going to transform everything with the ship, but saying something a little bit more like we are going to do this one small project and it's going to be awesome. We're going to stop the deployment issues we had with one of our major projects, which is one of the things that we accomplished. And then finally, funding. Learn this the hard way. No matter what a manager tells you, if they're not willing to spend money on it or spend money on people, they are BSing you and they just don't want you to quit. That's the reality. All right, so what we're going to create here is a new business as usual with DevOps. Hopefully I've cast that vision for you. It means more deployments. It means faster median time to resolution after issues. We had one of our flagship hosted products, which used Chef. They had 3 solid years of every deployment having an issue. They ended that when they used Chef. And they even deployed something with a clear bug in it in production, and they rolled back in 15 minutes. And they wouldn't have done that before because the deployment was so painful before that they would have said, okay, is this bug really bad enough? Can we live with this until the next time? And so they were able to make better choices for their business. We do ship faster. These last 2 things are aspirational at the moment, especially if you look at CR stock. More profits, market share, and productivity. I can see the relationship, but we're clearly not far along enough in our transition to get to that market cap going up. Those are our goals, but we haven't gotten enough of a base to see that as a reality. So hopefully I have passed the vision for you for what infrastructure as code can do for your organization, bringing groups together to create a repeatable reality that can start way earlier in your software development lifecycle. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on my blog, hedge-ops.com, or come and talk to me after the thing. Thanks, guys. Y'all were great. Yeah, I'll put it on my blog. It's publicly available on the Prezi thing, so yeah, I'll put a link up on my blog under the speaking this afternoon. Thanks, all.
And I was going to make a quick plug that in April, we do have a talk that's talking about how you can actually start doing DevOps in your organization. Because I'm sure a lot of you are going, this will never work here for us, or we can't do this, and DevOps, whatever type stuff. So we actually do have a presentation going on in April that's going to talk about how you can start this journey for your company. So visit DevOpsLive.org.
Yeah, I go to the meetup or the DevOpsLive.org. Yeah, it's a really great group. I've done a lot out of it. Thanks, y'all.